Wine and Words Wednesday. We are live here coming from the library, so I don't have a glass of wine with me, but hopefully you do. And you're enjoying yourself on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon after the rain. So we are here in almost the end of National Poetry Month. And since it is National Poetry Month, I've curated a bunch of poetry selections for you. Now, normally when we think about some of the greatest poems and poetry of all time, a lot of them come from a bunch of old dead white men. And so even though I will share with you some poetry from old dead white men today, I have also chosen some much more modern poetry, a lot of poetry by women, poetry by people of color. So there's really a lot that I'd like to share with you this afternoon and a lot of variety. So sit back, relax, have your beverage of choice ready, and enjoy some of my favorite poetry and some of what is considered classic poetry here for Wine and Words Wednesday National Poetry Month edition. I'm going to start with a classic, and also one of my favorites. This is The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Now, my favorite part of that poem is when he says, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. He pauses for a moment between saying I and repeating I again. And I think that that's probably the most profound part of the poem, where he thinks to himself that he took the one less traveled by before saying that that has made all the difference. Here's another classic poem by Dylan Thomas. This is Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end no dark is nigh, because their words have forked no lighting they, do not go gentle into that good night. Good men the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death, who see with blinding sight. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my Father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. That was, of course, Dylan Thomas. Now we're going to change gears a little bit, and we have a nice springtime poem for our lovely spring day, even though it is still a bit cloudy out there. This is called April is a Dog's Dream, a much more modern poem by Marilyn Singer. April is a dog's dream. The soft grass is growing. The sweet breeze is blowing. The air is full of singing, feels just right. So no excuses now. We're going to the park to chase and charge and chew, and I will make you see what spring is all about. Keeping with the theme now, we have another poem called In Spring by Rose King. I'm out with the wheelbarrow mixing mulch. A mockingbird trills in the pine. Then, from higher, a buzz, and through patches of blue, as the fog burns off, a small plane pulls a banner, red letters I can't read. But I do see, over the fence, a man in a sky blue shirt walking his dog to the beach. He says he missed it. We'll keep an eye out. 4 barrows of mulch around the blueberry bushes. I'm pulling off gloves and he's back, beaming. It says I love you, Martha. Are you Martha? That was In Spring by Rose King. Now we have one that I think is lovely called Bread and Music by Conrad Aiken. Music I heard with you was more than music, and bread I broke with you was more than bread. Now that I am without you, all is desolate. All that once was so beautiful is dead. Your hands once touched this table and this silver, and I have seen your fingers hold this glass. These things do not remember you, beloved, and yet your touch upon them will not pass. For it was in my heart you moved among them, and blessed them with your hands and with your eyes. And in my heart they will remember always. They knew you once, O beautiful and wise. That was Bread and Music by Conrad Aiken. Now we have a poem by D.H. Lawrence, and we don't think of D.H. Lawrence as a poet. We think of him as a writer, but he did actually write a lot of poetry. And we have one here called Piano. Softly, in the dusk, a woman is singing to me, taking me back down the vista of years till I see a child sitting under the piano in the boom of the tingling strings and pressing the small poised feet of a mother who smiles as she sings. In spite of myself, the insidious mastery of song betrays me back till the heart of me weeps to belong to the old Sunday evenings at home with winter outside, and hymns in the cozy parlor, the tinkling piano our guide. So now it is vain for the singer to burst into clamor, with the great black piano appassionato. The glamour of childish days is upon me, my manhood is cast down in the floor of remembrance. I weep like a child for the past. That was Piano by D.H. Lawrence. Now we have another classic, Emily Dickinson, but this is not one that you may have heard so frequently before. This is called Come Slowly, Eden. Come slowly, Eden, lips unused to thee, bashful, sip thy jasmines as the fainting bee. Reaching late his flower, round her chamber hums, counts his nectars, alights, and is lost in balms. That was Emily Dickinson's Come Slowly, Eden. Now we have a much more modern one. We're moving through the years. Open Gesture of an Eye by D.A. Powell. I want to give more of my time. To others, the less I have of it. Give it away in a will and testament. Give it to the girls' club. Give it to the friends of the urban trees. Your life is not your own and never was. It came to you in a box marked fragile. It came from the complaint department, like amends on an order you did not place with them. That was D.A. Powell's open gesture of an eye. Now to Anne Sexton. I remember. By the 1st of August, the invisible beetles began to snore, and the grass was as tough as hemp and was no color, no more than the sand was a color, and we had worn our bare feet bare since the 20th of June, and there were times we forgot to wind up your alarm clock, and some nights we took our gin warm and neat from old jelly glasses while the sun blew out of sight like a red picture hat, and one day I tied my hair back with a ribbon, and you said that I looked almost like a Puritan lady. And what I remember best is that the door to your room was the door to mine. That's I Remember by Anne Sexton. One of my favorite poets is also a songwriter, Joni Mitchell, and one of my favorite songs is Both Sides Now. Rows and flows of angel hair, and ice cream castles in the air, and feather canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way. But now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow, it's cloud illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. Moons and Junes and Ferris wheels, the dizzy dancing way you feel, as every fairy tale comes real. I've looked at love that way. But now it's just another show. You leave 'em laughing when you go. And if you care, don't let them know. Don't give yourself away. I've looked at love from both sides now, from give and take, and still somehow, it's love's illusions I recall. I really don't know love at all. Tears and fears and feeling proud to say I love you right out loud. Dreams and schemes and circus crowds. I've looked at life that way. But now old friends are acting strange. They shake their heads, they say I've changed. Well, something's lost, but something's gained in living every day. I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow, it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life at all. I've looked at life from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow, it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life at all. That was Both Sides Now by Joni Mitchell, poet and songwriter. The next poet that we're going to feature is Audre Lorde in A Litany for Survival. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone, for those of us who cannot indulge the passing dreams of choice, who love in doorways coming and going, in the hours between dawns, looking inward and outward, at once before and after, seeking a now that can breed futures, like bread in our children's mouths, so their dreams will not reflect the deaths of our own. For those of us who were imprinted with fear, like a faint line in the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk, for by this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found, the heavy-footed hope to silence us. For all of us, this instant and this triumph, we were never meant to survive. And when the sun rises, we are afraid it might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we are afraid we may never eat again. When we are loved, we are afraid love will vanish. When we are alone, we are afraid love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive. That was Audre Lorde's A Litany for Survival. The last poem that I would like to share with you today is Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about your despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clear and blue air are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. That was Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. I hope that you've enjoyed some of the poems that I've shared with you today. I hope that you come to the library and maybe pick out some new poetry books to enjoy in this National Poetry Month of April. And I hope that you come back to the library now that we are open so that we can say hello in person. Thank you so much for joining me today, and have a great week.